Greetings, enlightened ones. Thank you for joining your Reverend again on this beautiful Monday afternoon. So, in today's video, we're going to be going over my top 10 favorite Darkwave bands here in 2025. Your Reverend finally dyed his hair. I'm getting my roots back, baby. Nah, but honestly, I just decided to dye my hair. I didn't know whether or not, I wanted to or not. I was indecisive. Do I just let my natural just grow out, or should I just go back to black? And here we are, still just constantly dyeing my hair. I can never get away from the black. It is just who defines me as a person. If there was a genetic splicing, kind of like BioShock, if you guys ever played that game, I would probably splice my genetics just to have black hair, just because I just love black hair so much. I figured I might make this as like a music series, I guess, of all of my favorite goth genres, if you will, and kind of collaborate them into a separate category. You know, you got your Darkwave over here, you got your goth rock, death rock, industrial, post-punk, new wave, etc. I mean, those are pretty much the same genre, so I might just kind of condense cold wave, new wave, and post-punk all as one whole category of their own, if you will. But today we're strictly focusing on the Darkwave genre, and I decided to do the Darkwave genre just because if you guys have watched my last Goth Talk video, I pretty much had talked about how Darkwave is pretty much my favorite musical genre within the alternative scene, goth scene, whatever you want to call it. And with the Darkwave genre, it always resonated with me more. I mean, when it came to the lyrics, the way the music's produced, I mean, there's just so much more power, I guess, in Darkwave. If you're going through tough times or you're feeling a little melancholy, if you will, Darkwave just kind of touches me more, I guess. I've already told you guys I've been through a lot of shit, and so I guess you can kind of for most people, you know, they look at music and they resonate with it, right? So, I mean, music in general is always just a powerful type of instrument in our day-to-day lives, and I think Darkwave is what basically resonates with me the most here. So that's kind of why I decided to do it as my first genre, if you will, and go over my top 10 favorite Darkwave artists of all time, and that list is continuing. I mean, I literally just discovered a few of these artists that I'm going to talk about here that I've actually just started including as my top 10 picks just because they're that good. A lot of these artists are actually going to be a lot of newer artists. A lot of these artists are brand new artists that have just kind of developed over the last, I'd say, 8 to 10 years, even more recently than that. Without further ado, let's go into my favorite top 10 Darkwave artists. So my number one favorite Darkwave artist is probably going to be Brandy Kills. They are a Russian Darkwave band, again, from Russia. I've always wanted to see them perform live. They've never performed out here in the States, unfortunately, so I have a reason to visit Russia one of these days. There's a big conflict going on right now between Russia and Ukraine, so I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon. Every single album they've ever produced has just been an absolute banger. There's literally, I think, over 10 different albums that they've created, and if you take a listen to any of them, they're awesome. They have a mixture of both Russian and English albums. Every now and again, they'll produce a Russian-made Darkwave album, and every now and again, they'll make an English one, and every single one has just been absolutely a banger. I don't speak Russian, so I don't really understand fully the lyrics. However, the English ones kind of touch base with me a little bit more. And I think my favorite album from Brandy Kills is probably going to be The Blackest Black. My favorite song from them is going to be Fallen Icon. Definitely want to give these guys a look at. They're super underground, super indie. I don't even think a lot of people even know about them. I've spun them at least once when I was DJing at the time, and I will continue to spin their music just because it is my favorite Darkwave band of all time. Number 2 is going to be Mareux. I think a lot of you guys probably have heard of this artist, honestly, even if you're not even into the goth scene or alternative scene. This guy kind of just sprang up from, I think, memes, I guess. He got more noticed from his song, The Perfect Girl, which kind of is like, beep, 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 beep. You know, if you look up that song, you've probably heard it before. He got super famous off of that song. I didn't really care for that song until my woman actually linked me a song from Lovers Up from the Past, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It's more of his dark wave album. He kind of does a mixture of both pop and darkwave together. But Lovers from the Past is probably going to be my absolute top favorite album that he's ever created. And it's just absolutely it's stunning. It's a great, every single song in that album is a banger. But my favorite song is probably going to be Night Vision. Night Vision is an absolutely great song. However, it's really hard to pick between Night Vision and Lovers from the Past. Both songs are really fucking good, but I think my favorite that I resonate with more is probably going to be Night Vision. So I think I'm going to have to say Night Vision's my all-time favorite song from Lovers from the Past. My woman's probably going to kill me for that because she actually showed me Lovers from the Past, the song. It's both the song and the album, but I think Night Vision just takes the #1 cake for me. My third all-time favorite darkwave band that's actually fairly recent that kind of came out, the guy kind of just sprang out of the blue, is probably going to be Harsh Symmetry. If you guys haven't heard of him, he's literally, I think he's from LA if I'm not mistaken. There's a lot of artists that kind of spring up out of LA that just kind of come out of nowhere. Harsh Symmetry is a pretty good darkwave band in my opinion. I think he's just a one-man band. He does both the software, keyboard, everything. I don't know a whole lot about him or his music, but he produces some really good darkwave. He's got at least a couple of albums out right now. My favorite all-time album from him is probably going to be Display Model. I think it was one of his first albums that he ever produced. His other two albums have been pretty damn good too. But my favorite definitely is going to be Display Model, and it's really hard to choose what song is probably my favorite from that album. I would say anywhere between Skin and Severance. It's really hard. I think Skin is probably going to be my #1, but it's really hard to choose even with this album too, just because there's a lot of good songs in this album that I don't really know which one is my favorite. But you know what, fuck it, I'm going to nail it. I'm going to say Skin is probably going to be my favorite out of this album. Then my fourth favorite artist of the darkwave genre is probably going to be Twin Tribes. Now, these guys have been around for quite a little while as well. I've seen them a couple of times live just because I really enjoy their music too. I've seen them at the White Oak Music Hall at least twice now. I picked up some of their merch as well. These guys produce really good darkwave. I can't lie, they are pretty talented dudes. I think they're actually from El Paso, I believe. I could be completely mistaken on that. It's somewhere in Texas out here with me, somewhere more southwest. I think my favorite album all time from these guys is probably going to be The Ceremony, and my favorite song is going to be The River. My fifth favorite album is probably going to be Give My Remains to Broadway. These guys are kind of like, I would consider, think of like if rap and goth music came together and they formed a kid. That's the best way I can kind of explain how these guys have produced music. They honestly have their own unique sound. They're still considered darkwave, but the way that they produce their music, it's very rhymey, it's very lyrical, and everything kind of just flows every time the lyrics are being said. So you can kind of consider it kind of like rap goth, I guess, but it's still got a darkwave spin to it. These guys are fairly new as well. They kind of just came out of the blue within the last couple of years now. My favorite album from them is probably going to be Beyond the Gates of Scythoth. I can't really pronounce that. I don't really know how you say that. However, my favorite song is probably going to be Comfort of the Void. Absolutely banger song. If you guys haven't checked these guys out, I would also give them a big recommendation as well. My sixth favorite album in the darkwave scene is now going to be Traitrs. Now, these guys have kind of... I was listening to these guys at the end of my college career. I discovered them back in about 2019, 2018, around there. My favorite album from these guys is probably going to be The Butcher's Coin. I've been really wanting to see these guys perform live. If you guys have ever heard these guys, how I would describe them is like The Cure's Pornography, that album from The Cure. This guy literally sounds like Robert Smith. I mean, there's a lot of people that sound like Robert Smith that do a lot of covers, produce their own form of music that sounds like the old Robert Smith. I've always loved The Cure for his more gothy stuff. I think Pornography is going to probably be my absolute favorite album of all time. Some would argue Disintegration is probably their favorite. However, with Traitrs, this guy is probably as closest as you're going to get to The Cure's Pornography when it comes to the way that he sings, the way that he mimics Robert Smith's lyrics. So if you guys haven't checked out Traitrs, I would definitely give them a big recommendation. Again, my favorite album is going to be The Butcher's Coin, and my favorite song is going to be Window from the Old House. My seventh favorite Darkwave album that has actually recently came out. This guy's a relatively new artist that just released his first new album. It's going to be Soft Vein. So this guy just kind of popped up in my feed on Spotify, if I'm not mistaken, is how I discovered him. I don't usually get a lot of my artists from Spotify just because Spotify doesn't really promote a lot of newer artists. It's very rare that they do, at least in my opinion. I find a lot of my newer artists through YouTube creators that do nothing but just post and expose newer artists that are out there, right? At any rate, Soft Vein is kind of just getting his foot in the door with his music, and it mimics a lot of older classical Darkwave. It has a lot of 80s synth in there. My favorite song, well, of course, there's only one album now that he has, so the only album that I can say that I really enjoy from this guy is going to be Through Blinds, and my favorite song is going to be, hopefully I'm not botching this as well, I'm probably going to Americanize the shit out of this, but Zwischenfall, I think is how you say that. I don't know if that's even German or what that even means, but that's probably going to be my all-time favorite song by him. If you guys haven't checked out Soft Vein, I would definitely give them a big recommendation. For being a newer indie artist, he's definitely been able to make it into my top 10. So definitely give them a check as well. Number 8 on the list is going to be Pale Veil. These guys are also like Soft Vein. They just kind of emerged out of nowhere as well. They're fairly new. They just literally released, well, he just literally released his first album starting in January, if I'm not mistaken, or early February. He was releasing a lot of EPs. I actually discovered him off of his first song, which was Pink Dreams, which is also one of my favorite songs that he's ever produced. His album that he just created was Cathedral of Gloom, so that's going to be my favorite album as of thus far right now. If you guys haven't checked him out, I would definitely give him a big recommendation. Just like Soft Vein, he was actually able to make it in here for my top 10 here. Number 9 is going to be Body of Light. These guys have kind of transitioned a bit, so I'm going to talk a little bit about these guys a little bit more than maybe some of the other artists, because the newer ones, I don't have a whole lot of information on them other than that they sound really good. But Body of Light, I've always wanted to see live. When I was seeing my ex, they actually had performed in Tucson, Arizona, which is where I was seeing her at the time. And I've always wanted to watch them. They were performing at a theater down there, and I think they're actually from Arizona. I'm not entirely sure what part. But these guys, I've always wanted to see them and perform, and finally they were able to perform with Twin Tribes at the White Oak Music Hall in a separate room, and I was actually able to watch them and enjoy them and their performance. But these guys have actually transitioned a lot from like their Darkwave to more like poppy type of goth music, so it's really hard to really call these guys Darkwave. But the reason why I call them Darkwave is because their first album that they produced, from my understanding, is Limits of Reason, which is a very hard album to even acquire now, just because it's a very forgotten album of theirs that nobody really knows about. They kind of just promote their other albums, their other poppy stuff, but their first album is very good. Limits of Reason is probably going to be my favorite album from these guys, and my favorite song of all time is going to be Is It Lost. Number 10, and the final artist on my list, and it's kind of funny because this guy is, I don't know how I feel about him, but number 10 is going to be Void Lust. This is kind of a local band from my hometown, Riverside, California. At least I think this guy's from Riverside, California. I could be wrong. He's from LA maybe. But I used to promote a lot of his music, and I discovered him back in 2018 when I was at my height of partying in the alternative scene in my early 20s. I actually enjoyed this guy's music a lot. At the time, I think I said a little bit too much of my political affiliation at the time when I just didn't know a whole lot, and I was kind of discovering myself, if you will, and maybe have said too much. And so at the time, I think he probably got a big distaste for me, because he was actually following me on Instagram, and then I noticed he unfollowed me for like no reason. But hey, dude, no hard feelings. I still enjoy your music. The guy's made at least one album. He's only made like an EP after that. But my favorite album, obviously, his only album, is going to be Delirium, and my favorite song is going to be Every Day I Die For You. But yeah, guys, I wish I could actually, like, play this music for you. Unfortunately, I don't own the licensing for it, so I can't play any of these songs for you and tell you what parts of the songs I truly enjoy. Unfortunately, everything is dictated by copyright rules, and then my channel will just get struck down. Do note that these artists are of value, and I do in my opinion, have a good ear for good music and good darkwave. So if you guys haven't checked these guys out, definitely give them a check. I guarantee you guys will fall in love with them just as much as I have. I do plan on making other videos in terms of the goth genres, if you will. I think next week I'll probably either do goth rock or post-punk. I'm not really too sure yet. I haven't really decided yet. But yeah, guys, I think that's going to do it for the video. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, or if you guys want to feel free and give me some recommendations, I'm all ears, man. When it comes to the alternative scene, I love discovering new artists, new differing types of genres within the alternative scene. I mean, hell, they've even got like a goth pop type of genre that's out right now, which is like The Masks or even Flower Babe. Maybe you've heard of them as well. I consider them kind of like goth pop, and I've actually been listening to a lot of their stuff too. So maybe I'll have like a top 5 goth pop artists that I enjoy listening to on the day-to-day basis as well. But yeah, do leave me some recommendations in the comment section below. If you found this informative, please share, like, and subscribe. You guys have a good one, and thank you for joining me. Peace out.